Hi, everyone. My name is Ricardo Pires. I am the product manager for WriteBack, and I'll be taking you through this webinar on the walkthrough of the product. I hope you enjoy it. In the end, we'll have time for questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to place them on GoToWebinar on the chat window and on the Q&A window, and we'll answer it. Thank you. So let's carry on. So the first thing I would like to talk about is where did WriteBack come from and why we think it's so interesting. So feel free to engage with us. We'll be sending the presentation and the recording. Here are the contacts. So we all know that Tableau is pretty amazing when it comes to making analysis. It's really a great tool to enable anyone to see and understand their data. But what if your use cases require some input or feedback from the users? Then that's where we kind of have a problem. We have many examples like forecasting or scenarios, root cause analysis if you want to identify an anomaly, just commenting or annotating something on a chart. It's not easy to do this because it's not a feature that it's built in on the tool. So you end up using external tools to do this on a daily basis. That's what we would do right now. But none of the alternatives is really good. Okay, you can use an Excel spreadsheet. It's really flexible. You can choose what columns you want, but you lose the governance, you lose the security. Somebody can go there and overwrite the Excel spreadsheet and you lose data from other users. So you have the flexibility, but you lose the governance side. You can also use tools specifically built for particular purposes like forecasting or budgeting, something like that. But the problem is then you have a good governance, you store everything, but you lose the agility that Tableau gives you. A lot of the times we are building the dashboards on Tableau. We are changing the measures, the attributes that we show on the visualizations, and we would want that our tool to get the input from the users could also comply with that. And that's basically the reason why we created WriteBack. So what this could do or provide all this input directly from your Tableau dashboard. Okay. So I think that's better than going here through all the features that the product has. It's much interesting if we see it in action. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to show you how we can use, how we can show WriteBack to the end users, how it looks like to submit the data. And then to get configuration, I'm going to show you how to configure it so that you know exactly how I reached that point and how easy it is to configure WriteBack for your business scenarios. So let me open Tableau Desktop. And the thing is, I'm doing this demo on the Tableau desktop because then I want to connect to the data that we are going to write to the database. But everything that you hear is exactly the same on the Tableau server. WriteBack works exactly the same way in both platforms, in both tools. So this is all applicable to your server. What happened is, so as I mentioned, we want the flexibility of Excel, but we want the governance as well. So this is the main thing behind WriteBack. And what happened is, although we have a lot of flexibility, we start talking with different organizations, and we came across three main patterns of usage that you can leverage WriteBack to achieve. So let me walk you through this and talk a little bit about them. The first one is root cause analysis. So let me show you. And by the way, this demo is based on our public sandbox. So everything that you are seeing in here, you can always download the workbook on the Tableau gallery and do it by yourself. Okay. So root cause analysis. Imagine that you have some outliers on your data, something that occurred, and while you can figure it out with Tableau, because like in this case, we have this profitability deviation. So it's very easy to go on Tableau and calculate a field that will tell you what is the highest profit that you have above what was expected or below what was expected. So it's very easy to do the calculation and to create this business rule to identify the outliers. But if you have external factors that are influencing this, in this case, profitability, it's not easy to capture them on Tableau because they might not have the full data associated with. You actually need some input from a user to give you that external feedback. And that's exactly what we have here on this dashboard. So we have multiple bars explaining the biggest deviations on profit, and we want users to be able to provide events that have possibly triggered this deviation. So for instance, here in Spain, we only have one possible event that caused this. Here on the map, we can see that the root cause still hasn't been found for this particular deviation on profit, which is higher than expected. So let's fill it up as an end user. So I can select the bar, click on the button from right back, and I can add, in this case, I'm going to add an event that has possibly triggered this, deviation on profit. So we can have something like a pandemic occurred. So the end users can leverage the form fields to provide different information, and all these fields are configurable, so you can really place in here exactly what you need your users to fill in. So I can put the date of where the event occurred. It's actually before this, so it was in March somewhere where it starts having this issue. Okay, I can pick up a date in March. I can say that this is clearly an external event. It's uncorrelated. It's likely the root cause of this problem. Which in this case, it's not a problem, it's actually good because we increase profit. We can say, for instance, what was the impact that this caused? And I'm just going to say that increased sales on health material. Okay. So now when I submit this information, we can actually trigger immediately a refresh on the dashboard, so that after the submission, the dashboard gets immediately updated. And you can see that now, because this dashboard is built in this way, the shape changed. We now have we say that Spain already has the root cause defined for this particular deviation. And even here on the bars, we can see that we have two possible events instead of just one. Okay, so this means that you can easily configure the forms and then easily integrate them with your existing data, so that you can close the loop and give immediate feedback to your end users. Okay, we also have the estimated impact and how many analyses were completed. So everything is closing the loop. So now let me show you a use case which is a little bit different. Okay, so this is about annotating a particular outlier. Imagine that you wanted to have your users, so you have a quarterly dashboard, and you want users to provide some feedback. What's their analysis when they see these numbers? Okay, and basically it's to provide, so you already have the quantitative analysis on the dashboard, and you want the qualitative analysis from the users. And again, it's not something that you can easily capture just with figures. And so that's the importance of the feedback. So imagine here we have the shipment trends dashboard. You can see that this is a quarterly dashboard. If I change the quarters, I get different data per year. Okay, we can see what were the comments that were previously submitted here on the top, and now the users can easily can easily submit new information. So we have two comments. I can click in here and place an additional comment saying 51% shipped is really good. Okay. And when I submit here, we don't have the dashboard. So it's just to show you the options. We don't have the dashboard being refreshed immediately. And whenever I submit the data, it just shows up here on the timeline from right back instead of being refreshed on the dashboard. And I can actually see here by looking at this, I can actually see that there was already a comment in here about the same aspect. It's just that it has 50%. So I can also use right back to fix existing entries, to edit them, say that it's 51%, submit. And since this is now redundant with my comment, I can also delete existing comments. Okay, so let me just click on the cross, and we have the two comments again, but they are now fully correct. Okay, so in this case, the dashboard is not automatically updated, but if you do you know, F5 on the desktop or on the server, if you click on the refresh button, it gets refreshed. And this is pretty much an option. I'll show you how to configure it later on. So now the last of these common use cases, okay, which is more about forecasting or establishing scenarios. So we had customers requesting this because instead of just one KPI, they want to provide information for a particular KPI or set of KPIs across months or across customers. So providing a form for this type of interaction didn't really work out because the form was too long. So we ended up creating this table format. So in this case, we are trying to forecast for across Europe the sales and also the costs, so that in the end we can establish a margin for the forecast. And to do so, I can easily select a map, a country on the map, click on Add Forecast, and I'm going to have access to this table that is dynamically generated for us. Okay, so what we have here on this screen, we can establish the context for the forecasts. So I can say that this is an optimistic forecast. Okay, so I can also put some comment in here if I want to. I can say again, what is the date of my analysis? Imagine that I did prepare the budget last week, so I can switch the date. And then here on the main area, what we have is we have the country that we are associating our forecast in this case, and we have a nice table that we can easily fill in to place the values. So I can start submitting information. I can navigate with the arrows like I was on Excel, making it really quick to fill in. Or I can use my mouse. I can even copy paste from Excel, provided that the data structure is exactly the same. Okay. If I have the same cells on Excel, I can just go here and paste them. And another important aspect here is that if you look here to the left on this blue area, is we can have a read-only flag that enables to either allow access to a particular cell or deny. So in this case, for the forecast, with what we have here configured, is basically you can only forecast for months above the month where you are. This is a common scenario because you don't want people forecasting for January because they would hit 100% right. They could just use the figures. So it's another functionality that it's available and makes it easier to build these use cases a little bit more complex. So now I'm going to submit the data. And again, in this case, we have also triggered the refresh on the dashboard. So I go to my dashboard and my margin forecasts, the sales forecast, all the KPIs that depend on on the data submission have been updated, and now we have all that ready here. Okay. Another important aspect in here is, imagine if you had the sales team doing, or the managers divided by countries. If you had applied the filter here on the map, you could publish this dashboard to all the managers, but each one of them could only forecast for his own country. So that means that write-back can also be used as a way to put people cooperating on the particular submission of certain data, in this case, forecasting across the countries. So these are just the main use cases that we have defined. So now let me show you how the configuration is done, and you'll also be able to see what are the possibilities even beyond these use cases, how you can actually use write-back on your own use case. So I'm going to use this last dashboard. This is a completely normal dashboard on Tableau. We have a few sheets that have been dragged to the dashboard. On top, the main KPIs, and then we have the map and some charts. And the first step, if I want people to submit data on this dashboard, is to drag the extension component. Okay. Once I drag the extension component, Tableau is going to ask me for where do I want to get this extension from. With write-back, what happens is we are, ever since the beginning when we built it, we are very concerned about security. So write-back is always running on your premises. It's on your network. You have to install it. It can be on the cloud or on your actual hardware. But the idea is that your data will never go through the internet unless you want to, okay? Because write-back by itself can work completely closed on your environment. So in this case, we cannot go to the extension gallery to go for an extension. We actually need to go for the extensions that are available locally. And what happens is, when you finish up installing write-back, on the root folder of the tool, you actually get a T-Rex file, which is the file that references this installation. So we can click in here. In this case, the file is pointing at localhost. On your environment, this would be pointing at your server. And now the first thing that we need to do, still around security, is to log in. Okay. On the public sandbox, we have this user 1, user 2. On your environment, write-back already has built in the connection to external systems for security, like Active Directory, Windows authentication, or even your Tableau server. So this means that you'll be able to use the username and passwords from your organization without any synchronization issues. And another important aspect is that if you are on the Tableau server, if you have a single sign-on mechanism, like Windows authentication, this login screen won't even show up, and the users, the end users, go straight to the data submission. Why do we need security? Basically, we want to make sure we are giving a lot of flexibility to the users, but we want to make sure that they we know exactly what they have done, if they have deleted some data. So basically, behind the scenes, I'm going to show you, we have a full audit trace on what is happening. And this is only possible because we have security in place, and we know for sure who is the person that is submitting the data. So now I can click on submit, and I'm taken to the configuration screen. So this is a process that dashboard creators have to do. So meaning people that are creating the dashboard for data submission. And it's a very simple process, okay? So the first thing that we need to choose is what is going to be the underlying sheet on the dashboard that we are going to use to capture data, okay? And I can choose across the different sheets available. In this case, I'm going to do a forecasting, a similar use case to the forecasting. So I'm going to choose the sales map. And below, we see all the fields that are being used on this visualization on Tableau. Now it's up to me to choose what are the fields that I want to keep together with the data that the users are going to submit. So in this case, I need the country. I should keep the read-only field to block the cells. And I also want the month and the year so that I know exactly where is the period that they are forecasting. So I can actually delete all the other fields that I don't need. Now, I need to assign a name for this data set for this use case. So I'll call it forecasting by country. You can pick up any name that you want. This is pretty much up to you to choose. And what is going to happen is this is going to become the name of the table behind the scenes. We are going to see it, but just bear that in mind that this is actually the name of the table later on if you want to check it. Now we can configure fields that we are going to show to the end users. So if I'm doing a forecasting, I probably want to have the users submitting the sales forecast, which is going to be mandatory. This is pretty much needed, and it's a numeric field. Maybe I also want the cost forecast as a numeric as well. And now maybe I also want to bring some context to this forecasting. So I'll probably need them to add a comment on the overall forecast. And maybe I also want a status on how the forecasting is. And the status is going to be a predefined field. It means that we can actually choose the options that the user can choose on a drop-down. So maybe this is draft, ready, and validated. Okay. So as you can see, you can create as many fields as you want. These can be mandatory, non-mandatory. They can be from different types. And now it's time to configure the table. So I'm going to click on this toggle, and we have access to this right side where we can configure the table that you have seen before. So now I can actually bring the fields to the different places. Okay? So read-only has to be a true or false field, a Boolean on Tableau. You can create any formula that you need because if you remember, this is coming from the sheet. So you are completely free to define what are the cells that are read-only and which one aren't. On the main form, to contextualize the forecasts, I want to have the comment and also the status. Okay? And we can even choose the order in which they show up. Okay, so yeah, maybe the status should be first and the comment afterwards. And now we need to choose what is going to create the table. And for the table, I'm going to put months across columns, and I'm going to use the sales forecasts and the cost forecasts on rows. Okay. So now, if I submitted this, I submit this entry, I would get immediately the table up and running. Yeah, so let's do it. So once I submit, what happened behind the scenes is that Writeback provisioned all the metadata necessary and created a table for us so that the users can now start inputting data. Okay? So this is all dynamic. You don't need to know about SQL or be concerned with that, because Writeback is acting as an engine that is able to convert these configurations into the necessary SQL statements. And now I can actually click on a country, for instance, Spain, click on Add Data, and I'm going to see a screen that mimics the configuration that we decided to do. So if you remember, I decided to put the status first. So that's exactly what shows up in here. my comment, and now I can start submitting the data. So let's put here 1,500. Okay. Now I can submit, and as an end user, this would send the data to the backend. Okay. Again, we can, for instance, edit this entry, and I can say that the cost is no longer 500, it's 600. Maybe I also want to add for the rest of the months. Okay, and just place it in here. So very easy to submit the information, and I'm just submitting some records so that we then check behind the scenes what is happening. So now I'm going to click on edit. The data was submitted with all the entries, and that's pretty much it. Okay. So as a creator, you can still get back to the configuration and revise it. Okay. So if you click on the arrow and configure, you get back to the place where you left, and you can actually change the configurations. Okay, so you can add fields, fields from the original sheet. Imagine that later you added a new field on the sheet. You can come here and add it. You can delete fields, change the types. Whenever something happens and we see that you might actually be losing data, we warn you. So if you try to update an existing field, we warn you that you might lose data. So it's pretty much up to you to see if you want to remove this column or keep it. Okay, in this case, I'm going to say no. Okay, so I'm not going to proceed. And here at the bottom, we also have the advanced settings. Okay, so the dashboard settings allow us to control the interaction with the dashboard. And imagine, I didn't click on auto refresh, but maybe I should, okay? So that whenever somebody submits the data, it immediately refreshes the dashboard. And for instance, we can also change the look and feel of the button. So maybe I want it in gray, and I want to say forecast year, okay? Now I can edit. The button changed. I can adjust the size. Okay. So now let's see how we can leverage this data. Okay. We have already submitted a couple of records for Spain. We even did an edit. Okay. So now let's look how we can leverage this on Tableau. So I can go on data and create a new data source. And this data source is going to be sitting on top of the write back data. So let me show you Postgres. So again, I'm using Postgres because that's the database that we installed with the quick installer from WriteBack. If you are on production on your environment, this is going to be your database. We support the main technologies like Oracle, SQL Server. So I'm pretty much sure that you'll be able to use your own database to do this. The only thing is that ideally you should use a new schema for writeback, because as we are seeing in here, forecasting by country, writeback has created a table on Postgres for us, and you can create as many as you want. So this should ideally be on a separate schema, so you know exactly what is the origin of these tables. They are all from writeback. So now I can double click on forecasting. Okay, this is going to be my forecasting by country data source. Okay, and if we look inside this table, we can actually see that this is a normal table. It contains the fields that we configured, either from the main form or on the table, sales forecasts, cost forecasts, as well as the month. The month, the country, and the year are the fields that we decided to retrieve from Tableau. Okay, so they are all sitting in here, making it easy now to match with your existing data. At the end of the table, we have a couple of technical fields. Okay, these technical fields have the date in which the data was inserted, but we also have here the is active. So as you remember at the beginning, I told you that we have a full audit trace on how what everyone does with writeback. So if I want to know exactly what happened, I can actually check by joining with the audit table. So I'm just going to do a regular join in here with historical audit. All we have to do is to use the data key, the surrogate key, and the dataset key so that they match. And now when I update, I actually get additional information about this record. So historical audit is the table that describes what happened to this record. And we can see in here that there was a first insert, and then data was edited, okay? And we can also check that this was done on the desktop and by user one. Okay? So on your real environment with integration and security, you'll be able to see exactly who did what and whether it was on the desktop or on the server. So you really have full information about what happened. And since we wanted to keep the full trace on the audit, what happened, if you remember, is that I fixed one of the figures for Spain, and that's why this record was invalidated. Okay, so we never delete the previous version of a record. We just say, look, if you want the latest snapshot, just ignore this record. If you want it for auditing reasons, please check it because it's important to know the history of these inputs. Okay, so now since I want to use this data source on my dashboard, I can actually filter by the active records so that the users will never see the previous version of an edited or even a deleted record. So I want to make sure that is active, is set to true. And with is active set to true, we only see the latest snapshot on my data. And that means that this data source is ready to use. Okay. So with the data source now in play, I can actually get back to my dashboard, go to my, for instance, to my map. And now I can work it out on the relationship between these two data sets. So I have my original data set that has the country and the country and the order date. And now I can go to my forecasting by country. And I can actually, for instance, rename the country to make it with a capital C. And data blending becomes immediately active. Okay? So this means that now I can start cross-referencing my original data with what we are getting from writeback. Okay? We typically want to hide here the technical fields, so you can just hide them. And now, basically, this is a normal process on whenever you are reaching out to a new database or to a new data source on Tableau. Now you can pretty much use it exactly the way you want. Okay, the month and the year, they should be considered dimensions. So I want them to convert to dimensions. So it's very easy because in the end, writeback is creating a table that is very simple to build the data sources on. So any mechanism that you know from Tableau can really be easily leveraged so that you take advantage of this. Okay. So I have established the join by country. If I wanted to establish so I can also establish the join by date. Okay. What I need to do is create a calculated field that generates an order date based on the dates that we are getting from writeback. Okay. So this means that I can basically build a string with the year plus the month order date, and plus the first day of the month. And I can actually build an order date that I can now also use to cross-reference with the original data. So now we have the relationship established. So now I can put, for instance, the sales forecast on the tooltip. Okay. Okay, so it looks like I have something wrong on my formula. Let's just double check. Oh, okay, so I missed the 0 on the month. Okay, so I actually need to go in here, edit, and yeah, you would need to use an if statement if you are above 10. Yeah, so I probably need that. So if the month order date is above or equal to 10, I'm just going to do like this. Then else I need to append a 0 and then the actual month. Okay, so this becomes a well-built date, and I'm just missing the end that we can now use on our dashboard. Okay, so now the date is recognized, so I can get back here to my original sheet. And the forecast, the sales forecast is already on the tooltip. So now I can put the mouse over and I can see the forecasts for this particular country. Okay. So basically this means that we have been able to close the loop. So we not only have Writeback submitting data, but we also have our dashboard looking at that data. I have used a technique called data blending, but nowadays with relationships on Tableau, this is a version that was released recently. But relationships are also a good way to match your existing data with the forecasting or anything coming out of Writeback. It's also another option to relate these two data sets, or you can even use external mechanisms like views or anything. So it's pretty much up to you to see what is exactly the best way to connect the data from Writeback and your existing data, because we give you all the options to do so. Okay. Yeah, and with this we have pretty much concluded the demo. I could basically now publish this to the server and check in there, have the user submitting the information. The only thing that I need to be careful is when I'm publishing to the server, I should basically make sure that only the people with the right permissions have access to the dashboard, so that nobody that doesn't really care about this is able to submit any irrelevant data. Okay. So let me just get back to the presentation. So we have seen it in action. I think it was clear. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to place them on the chat window. But let's just close it up before the Q&A. So in the end, how does it work? So this is just the standard architecture. So what happens is Writeback is deployed on your infrastructure. It's your data, okay? It's also your database, so you can really choose where you are going to write the data. It's always a different place from your data warehouse, your ERP. This is necessary because we want to have full control. But even during the demo, we have seen how you can easily merge the two data sets, your existing data with write-back. And in the center, you have security. So everybody needs to be authenticated. And this is what allows you to be secure and also have the audit trace. So govern as well. In terms of packaging, how does it work? So write-back is provided as a subscription. So it's a yearly license that you acquire. It includes manuals. So all the information is publicly available on our website. We try to have this as comprehensive as possible. So you find user manuals, installation manuals, roadmap, all the information is available here. We also provide a support service desk. So this means that if you are engaging with us on the technical side, you just have to go on our portal, open a ticket, and you go straight to the technical team with a question. This is the best way to ensure that we have a proper response. And we have an SLA of 2 business days, but I would say that all our requests are answered in less than 1 business day. Okay. So service desk, we provide regular updates. We have been doing releases about every 3 months. And that means that you get access to the new versions during this year where you acquired it. The pricing is available on our website. Just check it out. But basic pricing is defined by tiers of users. And so it's like 50 users, 100, but we only count with write-back users. So you don't have to license your full Tableau user base. You just have to license the users that will take advantage directly of write-back and interact with it. If you want to do a trial, feel free to do so. These are the instructions. Just go on our website, download the 30-day trial, get the license, test it on your environment with your use cases. And if you come across any issue, just reach out to our service desk and we'll help you out. It's quite a simple process. You just need to have a Windows machine where you can install write-back, and you can immediately work at least with your Tableau desktop, which doesn't require any particular settings. You can start working immediately with it. So it's a very simple process and really enables you to see how it matches your business case. Just before the Q&A, so we have been engaging with quite a few customers. For 2 of them, we have been able to obtain some official quotes on what's their opinion on the product. Rotex is using write-back on the industry to help the supervisors on the production line to provide any information that is relevant from the shift, and then display it on the monitor so that everyone can see. But it really made their lives easier because they can now just go on the Tableau dashboard and submit this relevant information immediately. And we also have Lind. Lind is an industrial gas company. They work across, nowadays I think it's across the world, but they have write-back deployed in EMEA, and they are using it for finance forecasting. So the things we discussed, they are using a lot of these features, and they even have built a more complex mechanism that complements the write-back data with data submitted automatically on the same use case. So it's also a very interesting use case, and they are using it extensively as well. So now for Q&A. So we have question 1. How did you decide which months were read-only? Can you please explain? Yeah, so I can easily explain that. Let me show you. So for the read-only, I'm actually using an existing field on the data set. So this is just a calculated field on Tableau that returns true or false. And inside, we have an expression, okay? This can be anything that you want. If it requires true or false, it's going to work, okay? So if I add here like +1 or -1, it means that now we are also able to forecast for the current month, for instance, okay? Because the idea is, let me just show you, but the field is being captured from the data source. So it means that this is really fully dynamic. You can change it on Tableau, and then it gets reflected immediately on write back. Okay. So now what is going to happen is that I can also forecast for July, and before I could only forecast starting in August. Okay, and this is an example of a simple expression because this is evaluated cell by cell to see if it's true or false. So you can pretty much make it as complex as you want. Okay. The second question that we have is are there language selections for English options, true or false? Yeah, so what happens is you see here the months in Portuguese. This is just because I'm leveraging the fields from Tableau. So this is what Tableau is showing me, although I have it in English. He's looking at my operative system and is displaying it in Portuguese. If you use it on your environment, you'll see everything in English. Okay, true or false, the months. And this is just because we are actually capturing the data from Tableau. Okay? So yeah, you don't have to worry about it. Everything will be in English or on your language, at least for the fields that you capture from Tableau. Okay? I'm not sure. Are there any more questions that you would like to place? Okay, so yeah, so we have a third question. If the demo that we are using is the one that is available on the website, yes, it is. I only use the local version just to avoid any problems with internet, but this is exactly the same demo that we have available on the web. The only thing that is different is how you connect to the database, but you just have to put all the passwords as password, and the user 1, user 2, they are the same. So it's the only difference is the username for the database, but you'll get it all configured on the workbook, so it's very easy to use. Okay. So if there aren't any more questions, we'll be closing it for today. I hope you enjoyed the webinar, okay? And I hope you give it a trial, do a trial with it, and basically input data right now and start using it. Thank you very much for your time.